Rio Grande, boys and girls, third grade. It's time to go over our solutions for DMA. So if you would take out your week 2, day 1 solutions, we'll get started. So the first set of problems asks us to round these following numbers to the nearest 100. So I've got my number line here. And remember, we are saying to round it to the closest 100, not add 100 to each one of these numbers. So if we take a look at my number line, we have the number 634. So the number 634, if we look at a number line, and I'm going by hundreds, I'm going to demonstrate for you here what my number line looks like. So I have it labeled in groups of hundreds. So I'm just going to start here at 300. So I have 300 to 400. I have 400 to 500, 500 to 600, 600 to 700, and 700 to 800. Now, you will notice that in between each of the 100 marks is our halfway point, which is 50. So in this particular case, if we're looking at 700 and 800 as our hundreds, then 750 would be the number right in the middle. But we're looking for 634. So if we think about what's in our hundreds place for 634, we know that 634, if we look at our hundreds, we have a 600. So that means that our number, this number 634, lies between 600 and the 100, which is the next one, which would be 700. So these are the two groups of hundreds that this number falls between. Now, we need to determine or figure out where does this number lie between the 600 and the 700. So if we look at our blue marks, these are 10. So this would be 610, 620, 630, 640, 650. We're looking for 634. So we want 610, 620, 630. 634 should be right around here somewhere. Not to 640, but it's close to 630. It's in between these two groups of tens. Now, when we are deciding if this number is going to round to 600 or 700, we want to use 50 as our middle point, or the tens place. So if the 30 is not greater than 50 in our tens, then we are going to round to the lower 100 that this number is between. However, if this number was greater than 50, then we would round it up greater 100. And since we know that 634 is less than 650, we can see that it's closer to 600. So we're going to round 634 to 600. It's 34 away from 600. The next number that we want to round is 268. So if we look at our number line and we look at this is going to round to 600. If we look at our 100 place, we see 200. We know that this number, 268, is going to be between 200 and the next 100, which would be 300. So I'm going to go onto my number line, and I'm going to look at 200 and 300. So if we look at 200 and 300, we want to find 268. So we have 210, 220, 230, 240, 250, 260. We want 268. So we're not going to go to 270, but we're going to be pretty close to that next group of 10. So we're going to label this with 268. Again, we're either going to round it to 200 or we're going to round it to 300. So knowing that 268 is past 250, or it's past the 5 in the tens place, this tells us that we are going to round, or it is closer to 300. So when we go to write, the nearest 100 for 268 would be 300 in our answer box. Our next number to round is 489. So if we, again, look at our hundreds place and we think to ourselves, what two hundreds is 489 going to be between? It's going to be between 400 and the next 100. So it should be between the 400 and 500. So let's take a look at that on our number line. We're going to look at 400 and 500. So if you notice, 489, this is 450, 460, 470, 480. This would be 490, so we're going to put the dot, or we're going to place right before 480 or 490 as 489 right here. Now, once we know where that number is located in between our 400 and 500, now we have to determine which one is it closer to. Which one are we going to round this to the closest 100? So we already see that it's past 50. So looking at our tens place, if it's greater than 50 in our tens place, we're going to round up. If it was less than 50, we would round down. But we can obviously see that look how close this 489 is on our number line to 500. So it's 11 away from 500, but it's 89 away from 400. So we know that 489 is closer to 500, and that's what we would round 489 to. So in our answer box, we are going to say that 489 is going to be closer or round to 500. Now, what's the purpose of rounding? Rounding helps us get a nice estimate when you want to add, subtract, multiply numbers, to get a reasonable or less an idea about what that amount is going to be without having to actually go to the exact numbers. So it's really important to be able to estimate. In this case, rounding is our estimating tool. Let's go to our next problem. We have 55 plus 84. We can use our break-apart strategy. So we know that we have 50, which is 5 tens, 80, which is 8 tens. When we add those two, we can, of course, break this up as 20 and 30, especially if we know that 80 and 20 is going to make 100. Sometimes that's easy to do and break it up quickly in our heads to do it without having to count on our fingers or we are doing some mental math. So 80 and 20 is 100 plus 30 more is 130. And we have our 5 ones and our 4 ones. And when we add those together, that makes 9. Then we take the tens and the ones. And you'll notice that we had enough tens to make 100 when we added our tens. So now we have 130 plus 9. And we add that together, and it's 139. Because 9 and 0 is going to be that 9 in the ones place. Now, another strategy that some may use is take your largest addend, which would be 84, add on the 50 first from the other addend, which is 55. If I break this up as 20 and 30, I know that 84 and 20 more would be 104, and then I add the 30 to that 104, and that would make 134. So now I've got a partial sum, and now I need to add this 5 ones from my 50, which would be this 50 here, add 5 more, and when I add 5 more to the 4, that would give me 139. So again, the same sum, just using a different strategy. Our next problem has to do with geometry. So geometry is the study of figures, and in this case we have a two-dimensional figure, which means it doesn't have any height, but it has some, and it has angles or corners. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 corners with vertices, and we have 5 sides used by making lines. We use lines to make these sides, and we have 5 sides. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There are 5 sides. So if you know anything about a 5-sided figure, any 5-sided figure is called a pentagon. And if you know anything about the Greek and Latin roots, penta has a meaning, which is 5, and gon has a meaning, which is sides. It's a 5-sided figure. So we have 5 sides here. Now, a lot of pentagons we see have usually a more of a shape like this. However, this could be called a regular pentagon, which means that the sides that we see here are more equal to one another. This is called an irregular pentagon because the sides that we see here are not the same length. So we have regular pentagons and we have irregular pentagons. The next question is asking about the value of the coins, and value means how much they're worth. So they're not asking for how many coins we have, they're asking you for the value of the coins when we put them together. So quarters, each quarter has a value of 25 cents. And when I put those two quarters together, 20 and 20 is 40, and 5 and 5 is 10. So when I add 40 and 10, that means that my value is 50 cents. So my 2 quarters have a value of 50 cents. I have 4 dimes, and sometimes it just helps me to model. So I know that a dime has a value or is worth 10 cents. So if I take dimes and add and count by tens and add 10, 20, 30, 40, my value of my dimes is 40 cents. Now, my penny, I have 6 pennies. My value is 6 pennies. Remember that a penny has a value of 1 cent. So if I add 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 cents onto my amount here, I have 50 cents from the 2 quarters, 40 cents from the 4 dimes, and 6 cents from the 6 pennies. So if I add my 50 and my 40 together, 50 and 40 would make 90 cents. And I add 6 more pennies onto that, 6 cents. Together, that is going to make 96 cents. And if we were going to think about 96 cents and think about rounding or estimating, 96 cents has a value of almost $1. We're actually only 4 cents away from $1. So this is kind of how rounding comes into play with money. So we're going to continue talking about rounding here in towards the end of the week, and we'll start to become a little more familiar with how to round to the nearest 10 and round to the nearest 100. So that's it for today. I will post again tomorrow our week 2, day 2 solutions tomorrow, and I hope you have a very wonderful afternoon.